For TAM, currently India's only TV ratings agency, a 50-50 joint venture between Kantar Media Group and Nielsen, the new TV guidelines spell doom for its future in India. Be it reducing TAM's cross-holding from 50 to 10% or increasing its meters to 20,000 within 6 months. Also the fact that BARC, the joint industry body, will go live with its measurement ratings agency by October this year, taking on the official TV currency status. So, what's the plan? Is there a plan, or is this the end for TAM in India? To answer all those pertinent questions, I'm joined by none other than Eric Salama, Chairman and CEO of Kantar Media. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us on Brand Equity.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Right. Eric, the first question really being, given that it is impossible to reduce TAM's cross-holding from 50 to 10% in less than 30 days, there was really no option but to move the court.
It's not just in the interest of our business. We're doing it because there's a hugely important point of principle at stake here, and because the industry needs us to take this action. The industry could be faced with no ratings from now for an indeterminate period, and that would be bad for broadcasters, advertisers and agencies. So the whole industry would suffer if we didn't take this action.
Given that BARC is looking to go live by October this year, what is TAM's fate, considering BARC is certain that it will become the official TV currency? I mean, then, what really happens? Is this the death knell?
I think we need to wait and see. I mean, there's a lot of aspiration from BARC. BARC have put out tenders for various pieces of work. They've announced a deal with someone called Médiamétrie yesterday,
correct,
who have never operated outside France. I think the only market they've ever operated in is Morocco, whereas I understand it, they're about to lose their contract. So they've got no experience of operating really successfully outside France at all.
Right.
They are owned by broadcasters and agencies, which seems bizarre given all of the talk about cross-ownership. But BARC has decided to make them their technology partner, and I think we would all wait and see how that develops, and then see what role we and others could play in helping BARC set up the service within India.
Right. Eric, there's no doubt about the fact that TAM is, single-handedly one of the most experienced organizations when it comes to measurement in India, TV measurement in India. But given that, let's assume, hypothetically, that you do win this bid for panel management. Is it enough? Is it a robust business model for TAM to operate out of India with just panel management that they'll have to look at? Does that make sense at all for it to continue to exist?
Your question is very hypothetical. I don't know if we are going to win the panel management part of the BARC contract. I don't know when that would start. We don't know what the terms would be. I think we're pretty confident that we provide a service at the moment at very economical rates. So I would be very surprised if BARC could actually deliver the service cheaper than we're delivering it at the moment. But I think all of those are questions for the future. For the moment, we need to ensure, or at least try and ensure, that the industry has got a rating system that allows the industry to continue to operate. Because I think there would be genuine chaos if no ratings existed for a period of 8 months or a year within the market. The market is changing at too fast a pace. There's too much investment going on within programming. There's too many negotiations between all of the parties for the industry to have no ratings for the next year.
Right. Eric, those are some pertinent points. But, you talked about the fact that it's very difficult for BARC to really deliver a service that is, significantly cheaper than yours. And I asked them the very question. And BARC members have told me on record that TAM meters were overpriced as they've been using proprietary technology. And because they're using proprietary technology, there's a lot of inflation, transfer pricing, export costs, all of landing costs, all of which is included. But they're also saying that, there are more effective and cheaper means of doing things, such as open source technology, which BARC has, of course, admitted officially. How would you respond to that proprietary technology versus open source technology, and the fact that open source is a lot more advanced, a lot cheaper, and hence they can actually deliver, they're saying 20,000 meters from the word go, that's October 1, 2014, with 20,000 at the same cost of what TAM has been delivering. If I'm not mistaken, I think TAM's meters right now are 9,600 as we speak.
I'm not privy to BARC's internal conversations, but I do know, based on experience from around the world, what it takes up to set up a panel and to run it professionally. And in my estimation, and BARC may be able to do it differently, there is no chance of BARC having 20,000 meters operational and a panel operational on the 1st of October. I think both Nielsen and Kantar have also put in bids for the meters themselves. And I think both companies have tried to really cut the price of the meters to BARC to enable BARC to deliver the services more cost effectively. So I hope that that's one way of reducing the prices. Remember that every meter that we import into India from outside attracts a very heavy level of duty, over 40% in terms of the price, which we don't face in other markets. So the price that, in effect, we pay and that the industry pays for a meter in India is at least 40% higher because of those custom duties than it is in other markets. The question you ask about open source and about proprietary, this is a really complex operation. There is no other market in the world which is operating on open source technology. So again, BARC may be doing something very different to anyone else, but there's no precedent for saying we're not going to use proprietary technology, whether it's from Nielsen or Kantar or GfK, who are the main providers around the world. That open source isn't operating anywhere.
Okay, but they seem to state on record that the model that they've borrowed is that of the UK, and apparently, you know, the UK model is also very similar to what BARC is looking to practice in India.
That's true, and we are the supplier to the UK equivalent of BARC, to Barb. So I know the relationship with Barb very well. The meters are based on Kantar media technology. The panel management is based on Kantar media technology. The establishment survey is done by Ipsos. So I know the contract incredibly well, and I know how that works in the UK. And we're all in favour of BARC being set up in the same way that Barb is set up in the UK. But I also know that it's not a simple task. And when we won the UK business a number of years ago, it took us 18 months to set up the panel on a smaller sample. So we're now talking about 20,000 meters in the space of 8 months. So maybe people can do things that we've never seen before, but we will never have seen a panel set up professionally and properly with 20,000 panelists in the space of 8 months.
I'd like to understand from you, what is the motivation for TAM to really make all the efforts that it has been making, whether it be reduce its cross-holding after, in significant time, or it mean, extending the reach of your meters and the number of meters, all of that. What is the motivation left to do so? If, it's quite clear that BARC does not want TAM to exist.
Well, I think there's two motivations. One is professional pride. I feel that a number of our people and the TAM business have been slurred by a lot of the conversation that's gone on in the market. There are some outrageous tweets from political figures. There are some outrageous allegations which have been made out there. So from a professional pride point of view, we're not going to kind of just retire meekly and just say everyone else, all these allegations are right. We need to stand up for ourselves. We need to talk about what we believe in. We need to introduce some facts and some rationality into the debate about these services, because there's a lot of bluster, a lot of allegations, many of which are not true.
Sure.
And so from one point of view, it's just professional pride. We also see it as our duty to continue providing services until the moment where people say to us, either legally you can't, or we don't want you. But I hope we don't get to either of those stages.
Right. Would you say, Eric, that TAM has been treated unfairly and with a bias despite serving the Indian media industry to the best of its ability?
I would absolutely say that. I think that some of the allegations have been verging on the libelous, and there's a lot of rumour which is just quite untrue. I think that TAM has supported the expansion of the industry. I think there's a lot of agendas at stake here which are not about what's best for the Indian media industry.
BARC members have also said or hinted that when Kantar bid for the technology bit to BARC, the proposals that they received were heavily discounted, suggesting that the data meters have largely been overpriced by you.
Well, I'm not going to go into the detail of what the pricing was, but there's a big difference if you're funding something yourself and you then need to go out and negotiate contracts with people, or if someone says, how can you provide this service and we'll pay you for it. So it's a different setup. BARC is a different setup to us taking on all of the responsibility and all of the risk around setting up a service. And remember, for the last 15 years or so, TAM has taken all of the risk around setting up the service. Every investment that has gone in has not been on the back of anyone saying we'll provide the funding. We invest and then we go out and find the clients to cover that investment. So we've been willing to put our money where our mouth is and really invest in the business and invest in the industry.
Do you think the government thought through their new TV guidelines when they put it out, or do you think somehow their views have been clouded by the media industry, which has vested interests in actually putting out those guidelines?
Well, I think if you go back to the guidelines that TRAI put out, we've complied with many of those guidelines, and many of them were sensible things that we evaluated and thought that TRAI was actually advancing the interests of the industry, and without any legal need to, we adopted them. The one guideline on cross-ownership, we believe, is a guideline that is against the interests of the industry. It would restrict competition. Some of the other guidelines that have been published about the government having access to panelist homes to check the panel, that would be a complete disaster. If anyone thinks that there are data quality issues now, there would be data quality issues 100 times worse if the names of panelists were out there and available to all kinds of different bodies to check. The guidelines on foreign ownership, we think, are completely unfair and against the interests of the industry and anti-competitive. Sure. So I think there's a number of guidelines which have appeared which go way beyond anything that TRAI has put in, which we have a real issue with and which we will fight as hard as we can and use the courts to help us with that and see what the courts think about that.
On that note, Eric, thank you so much. You were truly candid, and all the very best for your ongoing fight.
Thank you very much.